Welcome back to the Movie Man. Today I will show you a 2011 American science fiction action film called In Time. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. In the year 2169, humans have been genetically engineered to stop aging as they turn 25. However, when they do, they only have one more year to live. To see the time you have left until you die, you just have to look at your forearm. As time can be given and traded, it has now become the world's currency. A man called Will awakens and notices he is just under 24 hours. Today is his mother's 50th birthday, whose name is Rachel. The celebration, however, quickly turns into despair when the two start talking about being late on bills and loans. Will tells her that he will find some way to get a hold of more time. Rachel herself has less than 3 days left and will be gone for 2 days to work. She tells him to be at the bus stop when she returns, since she will pay off the loan and won't have much time left when she gets back. Will promises she gives him 30 minutes for his lunch, after which he kisses her goodbye and rushes to work. Before arriving at his work, he runs into a small girl who asks for a minute. Will gladly gives her 5 minutes and she runs off happy. He arrives at the factory where he works as an assembler and makes time storage devices. When the workday is over, he clocks out but receives less salary than expected. When he complains, he is told that the quota has increased and that he didn't reach it. Later that evening, Will is at a bar where some guys invite him to a poker game, but Will declines, telling them he doesn't have time. Instead, he walks up to a drunk friend called Boral, who tells Will that a man called Henry with a century on his arm has bought drinks for everyone. As Boral points at Henry, Will sees a man eyeing for him. Will then goes up to warn Henry that he is being watched and that he should leave, but Henry refuses. Suddenly everybody in the bar runs out as a gang enters. Boral runs up to Will and tries to drag him out while telling him the gang members are Minutemen, but Will wants to stay to see what happens and assures his friend he won't do anything stupid. The gang leader introduces himself as Fortis and says he wants Henry's time, offering Henry to fight for it. Henry feels sick and goes to the bathroom to throw up as a Minuteman watches so that he doesn't escape, but from nowhere Will kicks the door open and knocks the Minuteman unconscious, and him and Henry take off. Fortis's men goes after them in a car, but Will and Henry manage to hide in an empty facility. As one of the Minutemen tells Fortis that he recognizes Will, they stop their search for them. Will is upset and tells Henry he is out of his mind to show how much time he has. Soon after, as they introduce themselves, Henry reveals that he is 105 years old and that he is tired of living, which is why he acted carelessly. Will then get angry, telling him he and his mother have to work tirelessly at several jobs just to survive another day. As they continue talking, Henry starts explaining the horrific truth about their world, that rich people constantly increase prices and taxes so that poor people die and so that they themselves can stay immortal. But he says in reality there is more than enough time for everyone to live a normal life and not die before their time. Henry then asks Will what he would do if he had a century, to which Will answers he would not waste it like him. The next morning, while Will is still sleeping, Henry transfers all his time but 5 minutes to him. Soon after, Will wakes up and discovers he has a century on his arm. He looks for Henry and sees him sit on a bridge nearby. He attempts to stop Henry, but Henry times out and falls off down into the water. Later, Will goes to see Boral, who warns him about having so much time. Will gives him 10 years, one for each year of their friendship. Before he leaves, that evening Rachel leaves work to go home, but the price on the bus has increased from 1 to 2 hours and she only has 90 minutes left. She is forced to start running. Will sees the bus arrive but without Rachel. Fearing the worst, he starts running to get to her. She runs as fast as she can, and as the two suddenly see each other from far, Rachel only has seconds left. They rush towards one another, but it's too late and Rachel dies falling into Will's arms. Will is totally devastated and cries out in anger and sorrow. The next morning, a 75-year-old man called Raymond, who is part of a police-like unit called the Timekeepers, has found Henry's body. They spot a camera on the bridge and figure it contains footage of what happened to him. Meanwhile, Will enters a limousine that will take him across district borders. Into richer districts. For each border they pass, Will has to pay a higher toll. At the final border, Will pays 1 year to get through. The chauffeur then welcomes him to the district of New Greenwich and asks what his purpose is there. Will responds that he will make them pay for what Henry told him they are doing to this world. It is apparent he has arrived to a wealthy society. He leaves the car and starts running, which a woman sees and finds strange. As he remembers he doesn't have to run considering how much time he now has, he instead starts walking. Will then enters a hotel where he asks for a suite. The following morning he wakes up with 105 years still on his wrist. At breakfast the woman from before is watching Will eat. A waitress walks up to him who he tips a week and she tells him that he can't be from around there since she noticed he's doing everything a little too fast. Simultaneously Raymond and his colleagues have found out that Will has traveled across several districts to New Greenwich, suspecting that Will murdered Henry for his time. When Raymond sees his face he comments that he knew Will's father. In the evening Will goes to a casino where he gives 1 year to enter. He is shown to a poker table where he meets a man called Philippe who is almost 10,000 years on his clock. In the middle of the game the woman who has been watching Will suddenly appears and sits down beside Philippe. Will bets all the time he has, leaving only 30 seconds on his wrist for the chance to win a pot of 1,100 years, which he luckily does. Will now has 1,100 years on his hand. Philippe comments that he thinks it was a risky move. After which he introduces Will to the woman who is his daughter Sylvia. Sylvia invites Will to a party they're having the following day and he accepts the invite. The next day Will buys a vintage car for 59 years which he then arrives in at the party. Philippe welcomes him and introduces him to his mother-in-law, his wife, and once again Sylvia. Philippe invites him to another poker game. Later Sylvia walks up to Will telling her bodyguard, they will be fine, after which she asks Will to dance with her. While dancing Sylvia reveals to him that she saw him run, which reminds her about people from the ghetto. Sylvia also says she envies such people. She explains that all the time they have should make them free and happy, but instead it causes them to be worried and extremely careful of doing almost anything which she is tired of. The only way for them to die is if something happens to them. Will then immediately leads her out and down to the ocean. He undresses and jumps into the water, telling her to do the same. Nervous but also excited, she also undresses. After which they swim out naked together. They talk and begin to get really close to each other when a man suddenly calls out from the shore. They hide behind a rock and Sylvia says she wants to go back. Once in the house again Felipe asks if Will is ready for the poker game, which he is, but at that same second Raymond and the timekeepers enter the building and demand to talk to Will. They bring Will into a room and ask how he got his millennium, to which he responds honestly that he won some of it in a poker game and received the rest as a gift from Henry. They don't believe his story, confiscate all but 2 hours of his time and arrest him as Raymond is about to leave. Will asks why he is investigating a suicide when murders happen every day, to which Raymond, fascinated, replies that he sounds exactly like his father did 20 years earlier. Will then begins attacking the timekeepers and takes Sylvia hostage. They run out to his car and drive away. A chase ensues as Raymond follows in his police car on the highway. Raymond bumps his car against Will's and Will's car begins to spin. However, Will skillfully gets control of it and drives in reverse. Raymond suddenly crashes into a truck and the two manage to escape successfully. They hide under a bridge and Will asks to borrow a couple hours from Sylvia, but she refuses. They continue, and as the morning arrives Will drives into a trap set by Fortis and his men and the car crashes. The Minutemen soon after appear and they take almost all the time from the unconscious Will and Sylvia. As the two wake up, Sylvia has less than Will and Will shares a few minutes with her, after which they run. A while later Raymond sees their crashed car. Simultaneously Will and Sylvia have reached Boral's home and knocks on the door, but his wife opens and tells them, Boral died of drinking too much. Only minutes left on their hands. Sylvia panics. Will sees she has diamond earrings and the two run to a dealer close by who is willing to give 48 hours for the diamonds, which they accept. The duo then walk through the town as Will asks about her father. Eventually she reveals that Philippe is worth eons. They call Philippe and Raymond and Will demands they give the ghetto district 1,000 years in exchange for Sylvia. Raymond says he will end up dead as his father if he continues. In the evening the two head home to Will's apartment, where Will mentions that his mother timed out. He also talks about his father, who taught him a gambling game called Strong Arm, which he was great at. Will's father won a lot of time but gave it away, which Will think is why he died. They talk and find out that they are both in their late 20s and begin to feel a stronger connection with each other. The next morning Will is watching to see if Philippe transferred any time, which he did not, leaving Sylvia disappointed with her father. Will tells Sylvia that she's allowed to go home anyway. They go out to a public phone so Sylvia can call her father for a ride, and Will gives her a gun just in case. Before she goes, Sylvia kisses him. She then calls her father and angrily expresses her disappointment with him. Will is sitting across the road when suddenly Raymond appears from behind with a gun in his hand. Sylvia turns around and panics as she sees Raymond and then shoots him. Raymond is just injured, but instead of stealing his time, Will gives him a few hours before stealing his car. A couple hours later, Raymond's partner finds him, who thought he had timed out, and is surprised to see how much time he has. Meanwhile, Sylvia and Will act like timekeepers, and they stop a car to steal some time from a rich passenger and then take their car. Later, the two are sitting in the car watching themselves on the news. Will tells Sylvia to leave him, but she doesn't want to go back to her boring life. After which the two begin kissing each other. Raymond goes to meet with Philippe at his office. Philippe asks him if they have made progress in rescuing his daughter, but Raymond tells him that she doesn't seem to want to be rescued. Instead, Raymond has issued a warrant for her arrest and tells Philippe that he will also issue a warrant for his arrest if he were to help Sylvia in any way. Simultaneously, Will is showing Sylvia how to use a gun, after which Sylvia tells him she knows how to get more time. Next, the two are doing a smash and grab on one of Sylvia's father's loaning company branches, stealing time storage devices and telling all the poor people that are there to take whatever they can too. During a couple of weeks, the two steal time from Philippe's company at different locations and give all the time they take to poor people. Philippe can't understand that Sylvie would do something like this, but his wife tells him that it's because he's suffocating her like he does to all of them. One night, Will and Sylvie are playing strip poker as Raymond suddenly finds them. The two jump out of a window and start running, and Raymond chases after them. They get to a bus, but the bus driver recognizes them, and so they bribe him to drive and successfully escape. A day later, Fortis is looking for Will and Sylvia since there is a 10-year reward to catch them. Him and his Minutemen stop and interrogate a group of people on the street, taking one man's time so he dies, and threaten to do the same to the others if no one tells them about Will's whereabouts. One man steps forward to show them. Meanwhile, Will and Sylvia are sitting on a couch in a hotel room, remarking that they will probably get killed if they are caught. Suddenly, the door kicks open and Fortis and his Minutemen storm the room. The gang threaten them, and Fortis wants their time but offers Will to fight for it in a game of strong arm, just like he offered Henry before. Unbeknownst to Fortis, Will's father was a great player that taught Will, and Will accepts his fight. They play, and as Fortis is about to lose and the Minutemen are distracted due to suspense, Will picks up a gun and shoots all but Fortis, who times out and dies. Will and Sylvia then run. Later, the two are talking on a rooftop, seeing prices increase. Will says that to disrupt the system and make the rich pay, they need 1,000,000 years to give away. Sylvia notes his point. A few days later, Philippe arrives at his company's headquarters with a lot of bodyguards when Sylvia suddenly appears with a gun. As she is distracting them all, Will, disguised as a guard, points his gun at Philippe, and the two take him and go up to his office. They force him to open a vault where Will picks up a time storage device with 1,000,000 years on it. Philippe warns them the system will collapse if they distribute it, to which the two respond they have every zero intention of doing so. They then head for their car. At the timekeeper's control center, Raymond suddenly sees 1,000,000 years going off in New Greenwich and rushes to his car to find Will and Sylvia. As Raymond sees them, he only has 45 minutes left on his clock. Will and Sylvia head for the ghetto but see that the timekeepers have barricaded the district border. While being shot at, Will drive straight toward the toll booth and rams it, successfully crossing the border. Raymond continues after them. As they arrive at the ghetto, Raymond catches up with them and crashes his car into them. Will gets out of the car and hands the 1,000,000 years to the little girl that previously asked him for a minute, who runs away with it. Raymond gets out of his car pointing his gun at the duo, but as the little girl starts giving time away, people start rushing in front of Raymond. Will and Sylvia take their chance to flee and begin running. Raymond jumps into a police car and goes after them. Raymond sees them running but has to get out of his car due to roadblocks and chases after them on foot. Finally, Raymond stops them at gunpoint, after which they begin to talk. A moment later, Will asks Raymond for some more time to survive till they get to custody, since he and Sylvia barely have a minute left each. Suddenly, Raymond remembers he only had 45 minutes himself not long ago and looks at his arm, seeing he only has 5 seconds left. He times out in front of Will and Sylvia, who now also gets real stress since they are almost out of time too. They kiss each other thinking it's all over when suddenly Will sees Raymond's police car that has extra time in it that will start running with only seconds left. Will manages to get to the car and gets more time, after which he starts running back to Sylvia. In the last second the two grab the other's hand, embracing each other. This time Will managed to save his love. In the final scenes we see people crossing borders to richer districts and the timekeepers have no way to stop it from happening. Finally we see Sylvie and Will continue their heists and robbing bigger and bigger banks to disrupt the system. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.